What is the goal for today? Really going to cover a lot of different topics, including using the product, sample use cases, actually seeing it in action, both in the visual playground and in code, and then some of the questions that typically come up around hosting options, security, how do you get access to support and documentation, and of course, pricing. A few things about me. I've worn a lot of different hats over the years. Spent about 10 years in management consulting, 10 years leading technical teams. Last 5 years have been in this role with technology sales. I'm very much self-taught as a data scientist and machine learning engineer. I originally studied chemistry way back when in graduate school. And if I'm not working, you can usually find me playing tennis or some sort of board game. So, then let me introduce Landing AI to you. When you think of Landing AI, you should think of a pioneer in the vision space. We really come from the computer vision space with our founder, Dr. Andrew Ng, and we've brought that kind of fundamental technology and expertise in vision now to documents. As I mentioned, we are founded by Dr. Andrew Ng. He still serves as our executive chairman. His credentials are vast, but under his leadership and with some of the technology innovations he's been able to steer, we have processed over 1 billion images and documents and have a pretty substantial customer base, including individuals all the way up to large enterprise in the Fortune 50. In the fourth quarter 2025, there was a Forbes article where Dr. Ng kind of shared his vision of kind of where we are in this world of generative AI. And he says that we're past the era of one size fits all models. And what he means by that is that we're getting to a point where we need specialized models for specialized tasks. There's the general models, Claudes, GPTs, Geminis, but we're starting to see more kind of spin-off and specialty models. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today with Agentic Document Extraction. This is a model that is entirely trained on documents and just intended to perform well on document-related tasks. And specifically, we'll be looking mostly at field extraction and also preparing documents for RAG. But as a kind of document native model, we're able to take really any document as messy as you want to throw at it and try to pull out actionable structured information from that. And there is no document specific layout training or no additional fine tuning required. Everything you get back from ADE will be visually grounded. That'll make more sense once you see it. And all of the outputs are kind of industry standard JSON, which you can slot immediately into a production pipeline. So we will be spending a fair amount of time today in our visual playground, but it's important to recognize that ADE is fundamentally an API-based service. To scale up your document workloads, you'll be sending those documents to the APIs and you'll get back that JSON and Markdown response. And we actually have 3 different APIs. They're presented in order here from parse, split to extract, because this is typically the order that people will use them. And you'll get to see mostly parsing and extraction today. If there's more questions about split, I can pull up an example. The parse API is really where you're going to send your raw document. So it could be a 40-page PDF. It could be like an image of a product label. It could be an Excel file. All right, so you're going to send your native document and you're going to get back JSON and Markdown. And that will then digitally represent the entire document. The split API is used if you have concatenated many documents together and you actually need to split them apart. The most common use case that we're seeing is something like an application for a loan. So imagine, and there's this application and it's like 70 pages, but within that is the actual application page and maybe a supporting bank statement and maybe a supporting W-2 form or pay stub. And the organization actually wants to split all of those pages apart to process them separately. And then the extract API is intended for pulling out key value pairs. So here the example is invoices. You might want to pull out the invoice date, the vendor, the total amount due. And so the extract API is intended for key value pair extraction. And this is typically the order that people are using those services. We are very proud that from a benchmark perspective, we are kind of at the top of the leaderboard for the DocVQA benchmark. If you're not familiar with this, I'll show it to you briefly once we leave the slides. But DocVQA stands for Document Visual Question and Answering. It's a data set of several thousand, I think about 10 to 15,000 documents that were, I think, assembled by some faculty at UC San Diego and UC San Francisco. And then various models have competed on this benchmark to try to answer the questions. So on this benchmark, they've also had humans try to answer the questions. So LandingAI is the only model that has exceeded human performance and is also at the top of the leaderboard compared to some of these other much larger parameter models. And I'll show you the interactive gallery and definitely encourage you to check out the blog post. Um, so just want to comment on this is intended for large scale enterprise use. We'll talk a little bit about deployment options and security, but just to preview some of that, we are SOC 2 compliant by signing a BAA with us. We can be HIPAA compliant, GDPR compliant. So we do encourage you to run in our multi-tenant cloud if possible, and all of these certifications are applicable to the cloud. We also offer zero data retention where we're not storing your documents. Any sub-processors that are involved are not storing your documents. So with this turned on, we're finding that healthcare and financial services organizations are able to work in our cloud environment and are able to satisfy the security requirements of their internal teams. And since we almost always get questions about deployment options, I've moved this up in the presentation. So today we're only going to talk about cloud. If you do need one of these other deployment options, please do contact our sales team. We'd like to understand your needs and your tech stack and set up a custom conversation with you. But you can spin up an account in the cloud instantly. VPL here stands for Virtual Private Landing Lens. This would also be called kind of single tenant SaaS. So this would still be a cloud-based solution, but your tenant would be isolated from other customers. So this is something we can set up for you. We can also run in your virtual private cloud on any of the three major clouds. So you manage this, we support it, but then it's entirely in your environment. And we do offer a version of ADE inside of Snowflake. And if you're a Snowflake customer, this integrates really nicely with a lot of their Cortex services. So it's worth checking out. Okay, let's talk a little bit about use cases. So the two most common use cases are going to be field extraction and RAG. And what I have on the screen here are just a variety of documents that kind of represent what we see in field extraction. So typically the goal here is like some sort of key value pair extraction. So whether it's on the pay stub, you want to pull out like the total earnings, or on this like W-2, you want to pull out like the box one wages, or on this power bill, you want to pull out, the total therms used in the month. So field extraction, when you have many documents that contain similar fields but may present differently, is a very common use case. Right? So we saw this in miniature previously, right? You have a stack of invoices and you want to process each one of them and pull out these structured fields. The second common use case is preparing documents for RAG. So RAG is an acronym for Retrieval-Augmented Generation. That is the process that most chatbots use to allow you to kind of chat with documents. And most of the processes to prepare documents for RAG do not do well with tables, figures, infographics, some of the things that you're seeing on screen here. So in a lot of scientific documents, a lot of medical literature, financial literature, even, some like market research use cases. If you can't understand the tables and the figures, you're often losing a lot of the richness of the document. So our agentic document extraction performs particularly well on things like tables and flowcharts and infographics. And so if you do need to prepare these types of documents for a chat-based or knowledge retrieval system, that is a very common use case. So over here are those complex documents. We will help you then chunk them so that you can store them in a vector database. And then it's up to you to build some sort of like user interface or how the user is actually going to interact with those documents once you've prepared them for RAG. And this is actually where Snowflake comes in nicely, that if you are using the Snowflake system, they make it very easy to put a user interface on top of those documents. All right, we're not necessarily going to get to see all of these things today, but this is built for real world messiness. So if we're talking about, images that cell phone pictures, scanned pictures, handwritten, multiple languages, inconsistent formats, people who are writing outside of the boxes, things that are rotated, things that contain checkboxes and signatures. So these are the types of kind of real world messiness that we've really tried to solve for in this document specific model. So let's go over to the website. So on landing.ai, I'm here on the product page for Agentic Document Extraction. And there's a little bit more information here about some of the differentiators. So being able to deal with complex layouts, we've already mentioned tables and charts. You'll get to see visual grounding. That'll make more sense when you see it. And we've talked about field extraction. But from this page, you can click this blue button. It'll allow you to create an account either in the EU or the US region. So pick whichever one is appropriate for you. And you'll get 1,000 free credits for you to start testing some of your own documents. So once you do the one-time account setup, you will be in an experience that looks something like this. And I said I was going to show you the benchmark. Okay, I'm going to go back and show the benchmark because it's worthwhile. Um, so still on the website now in our blog section from resources and blog, you can search for the word DocVQA. It's also linked up here in the header. If you just click on read more, it will take you to this page. So certainly not going to read you the whole thing, but I do want to draw attention to this interactive gallery, and it'll give you a much better sense for the types of documents that are included. So we are kind of trying to be fully transparent here that we performed correctly on over 5,000 cases. We're just showing you 63 of them, but we are actually showing you all of the errors so you can make your own judgment about those errors. So this really gives a sense for the document variety and also like the types of questions that are part of this DocVQA. So for example, this is a pretty easy one. What is the page number written in the bottom right corner? Right, and the correct answer is 20. But some of the documents get quite a bit more complex. So something like this. So here, like, what is the total animal husbandry research amount? Decreased recommended. Okay. I should decide in advance which ones I'm actually going to read out loud, but you can see that in this case, it requires understanding this scanned table and then being able to pull a particular value out of that table. So explore some of the successes and feel free to take a look at some of the failures as well. This, is an example of a handwritten document. The questionnaire here is who is the letter from? And the correct answer is Craig. I think we returned HIAG as the answer. You make your own judgment about like how incorrect that really is, right? So we got this wrong. We returned Haig instead of Craig. But performing really well on these scanned documents, things with circles, on things with handwriting, and so on and so forth. So I really like the blog post and the interactive gallery that goes along with DocVQA. Okay, now we'll do some examples. Okay, so I'm here on the home page in the playground. Again, this is after creating an account. There's some resources over here on the right-hand side. This is a quick way to get to some of the support and some of the tutorials, also the security information. So be sure to check some of those out. Now, because I've had this account for some time, I actually do have a file history. And so this is really nice. I'm going to show you a lot of examples from the file history. Note that if you do have zero data retention turned on in your account, this will be blank because the whole concept of zero data retention is that we do not retain those files. So it's an important security feature, but it can also make it hard to go back and view previous work. So we mentioned previously that most people are going to use parse, then split, and then extract. So let's go ahead and start with parse. And our example today is going to be some utility bills. I'm going to show you these on screen to start with. The utility bills make for a nice demonstration because they're quite easy to understand, and they do come in quite a variety of formats, including these kind of user photographs, in addition to kind of digital native PDFs. So these are some of the documents that we're going to be looking at today. You can already tell, they're from lots of different suppliers, and so they all have a completely different format, but we do expect them to have a lot of the same information on them. So let me choose just one of these at random. Let's go with electric number 5, and we'll go ahead and drop it into the visual playground. So again, this playground experience is provided for convenience and to preview your documents. We do hope that you will migrate to the API when you're ready to do this at larger scale. But great, easy user interface for dragging and dropping. So what do we get back here? First thing you'll see are these boxes overlaid on the document. And in this interactive experience, the markdown here on the right-hand side is going to track with the bounding boxes on the left-hand side. And so you can also just click on one and go down to that section in the document. So in preparing the markdown file, the first thing the model is doing is detecting the human reading order of the file. So you're seeing kind of chunk 1, chunk 2, chunk 3 across the top. And then it's saying that chunk 1 is a logo. This one, chunk 10, is text. This one over here, chunk 17, is a figure. So you're getting back the human reading order. You're getting back the identification of the chunk. You can see this kind of barcode down here, or QR code or scan code. I'm not sure, I'm not exactly sure what that is. So you're getting back the types and the human reading order. And in the markdown, it makes it really easy to take a we'll look at these current charges, and you can kind of zoom in and slide back and forth. And so people use this really just to verify the accuracy of the extraction. So in addition to the markdown, you're going to get the JSON response corresponding to this document. This is also interactive, so like I can click on, it's going to be a good option. We'll just click on this chart. So it'll scroll down to that section. It tells me it's a figure. It's located on page 0 because Python starts with 0. And then these are the bounding box coordinates for exactly where on the page that figure is located. So as you're previewing, you can download the markdown You can download the JSON and you can share it with others, continue to work with it offline. If you do need to share things with other people, you can also click up here to share the result. You can make that document public, and now I could copy this link and send it over to Adrian, and he would be able to view it. So that's a way to avoid having to reprocess the same document. If you are in an organizational account, which we'll talk about when we get to subscriptions and pricing, in an organizational account, you can have multiple people in the account. But for a personal account, you would need to actually share the result if you want somebody else to see it. Okay, let's move on to extraction. So we've said, field extraction, very common use case. There's a couple different ways to get started with the extractions. So I'm going to just do start from scratch to start from the beginning, and then we'll go back and look at some of those other options. So here I can add a new field and say I want to extract the account number. And I'm going to skip filling in the description. But when you do this for real, don't be lazy, fill in the description. You will actually get much more accurate results if you fill in the description each time. But in the interest of time, I've asked for the account number. I've gotten back this value, and I guess starting with 7397, I could zoom into the document and say, yep, that looks like the account number. It's right there at the top. And I'm getting back the chunk reference for where that was found. So it's telling me it came from the chunk starting with CFFE, and I'm expecting that to be chunk number 2. So if I come back to parse and I look in JSON, and my second chunk here is indeed the one that starts with CFFE, and this is where the account number came from. So this is what we mean by visual grounding for every extracted value. So when I've asked for the account number, I'm not just getting back the answer to my question, I'm also getting back the reference for where on the page that came from. So you can continue to build up this schema, total amounts due, right? This should be a numeric, and run that schema. So if you know exactly what you want to do, you could build it up one step at a time. But most people will use kind of some of the assisted tools. And so let's go ahead and start over, and we'll go back and see the other options. So you can write a prompt to actually generate the schema for you, so you can describe what you want. You can also view suggestions, and I typically will at least take a look at the suggestions. It will also give you some good ideas about how to fill in your descriptions. So remember I said always fill in your descriptions. The nice thing about the use suggestions is it does that for you. So, it's suggesting the account number with the description, unique identifier of the customer's utility account. So compared to building this up one at a time, you can see kind of how much further we've gotten faster. And so now we have a more complete schema. It has the account number, it has the total amount due that I was building up individually. And you can see the extracted values and the references for all of those extracted values. So what's nice about this is you can now download this schema. You can work with this in any text editor to kind of tweak it exactly the way you need it. And then when you have it finalized, another option here is going to be just to upload a schema. So I'm going to go ahead and upload this one, which I had prepared in advance. And this is typically the way that we see people using the visual playgrounds to develop their extraction schema. So they'll try some of the suggestions, they'll try some of the prompting, they'll download this, kind of 80% of the way there, and then they'll kind of finalize it and then start uploading it against a couple different documents. Okay, this one was from September, and we do change things, so I'm not too surprised to see that little message. Um, so this is now my standard schema, and this is the schema that I'd like to apply to all of the other electric bills. So as I mentioned before, because we've been working in this account for some time, I can find all my other electric bills. I do this demonstration a lot, so we start to have many copies of them in here, but we could look at file number 2, and we could apply that same extraction schema. So I might upload this one. I'm probably going to get that same small error message again. Um, Oh, I think it's the same as the previous one, so it's not letting me run it. But you kind of get the idea that once you have your multiple electric files in here, let's take a look at least one of the ones that's a photograph. Okay, so something like this is a photograph. We can apply this same schema. I'm just going to clear that. And we'll go ahead and do it fresh. All right. So that is kind of parsing and extracting in the visual playground. I'm going to take a few questions and then we're going to go look at some handwritten documents, some circles and checkboxes in different languages. But Adrian, do I have any questions at this point?
Yeah, so I pulled the pre-registration list, and so we had a few questions and some general overviews that people like to cover, but let me cover the specific ones. We had, in which ways can we parse documents which do not always follow an exact formalic pattern? Does that make sense?
Um, I think that's kind of what I've been trying to illustrate with the electric bills. I'm assuming they're saying like formulaic pattern, right? Like all of these electric bills were quite different. And there was no any, I didn't have to provide any sort of training or instructions about these. I can just drag and drop them or send them to the API. So I think that question was largely covered by the last 5 to 10 minutes of content.
Awesome. And the next one is a little broad-based, but let me just throw it out here. The best way for automated extraction of complex object types from PDFs.
Okay, well, the automated part, you definitely want to use the API. And objects from PDFs, it's hard to understand what the person intends. So I'm going to say maybe either like a figure or a table. And so why don't we take a look at some of those as our next examples?
And I would
So
jump into that.
yeah. Okay, so from my file history here, let's pull out something like, we'll start with a common financial document like a 10Q. Okay, so this is 48 pages. So previously, we were looking at smaller electric bills, right? But here we've got a variety of tables embedded in this document. And if you've ever tried to extract tables with kind of an off-the-shelf large language model, you'll know that actually getting this type of information correct when there are not clear grid lines of exactly where the rows and the columns are. Sometimes there's merged and wrapping headers. This is actually very difficult for most systems. And then, of course, this document is just full of tables. Let's see if there's anything besides tables. Yeah, mostly tables, right? It's a financial document. So being able to now pull out structured information from this financial document based on parsing all of these tables might be an example of kind of what the question writer has in mind in terms of like difficult objects. So we definitely see a lot of use cases in financial services, investment banking, kind of understanding some of these corporate filing documents. Let's take a look at another one. So sticking with kind of longer documents, let's go to uh, understanding the symptoms of the common cold. So this is going to represent kind of a scientific research article. One of the nice things here about maintaining the human reading order is it knows that this is chunk number 6, and then it should continue up here with chunk number 7. it's so obvious to humans, but systems that are not document native are not going to understand that. They will not actually understand the two-column layout here and that this is 6 and this is 7. So definitely worth pointing out. And this type of document is going to have figures embedded. So this one's figure 19. And the figure descriptions are actually remarkably good. And they are describing the figure far beyond just what's in the caption. So, like, you could look at the figure caption here and say, okay, this is 4 lines of text. And you are getting those 4 lines of text here at the bottom, but you're also getting a description of the figure. So here it says the diagram illustrates the sneeze reflex pathway, right? A light blue rectangular box, right? I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but this is now a description of the figure beyond just extraction of the caption that goes with it. And, same would be true for this type of figure, number 39. Right, so it's a illustration of the cough reflex pathway. So this would be a good example of preparing a scientific document for RAG. So here's a line chart. Again, we're getting the text that goes along with the line chart, but we're also getting a description of the X and Y axis, and where possible, we're extracting the actual data points for the blue line and for the red line. So this is really kind of a key differentiator, and it's also kind of what the question writer may have been asking around like objects inside of PDFs. So like this line chart exists inside this PDF. I didn't have to do anything special to ask for a description of this line chart. It just comes back as chunk 57 along with the rest of the document. Okay, let's take a look at a couple more examples from the file history here. So um, let's do a little bit of handwriting. So I've got my cheat sheet on the side here of, let's, sure, we'll start with this one, patient intake and circles. So this is actually my handwriting. This is not a real form, but I did fill it out with my address here, 123 Main Street, right? So we've got extraction on the handwritten text, extractions here on which of the items I've circled for each of the questions. And then for something like this, where it says circle all that apply, you can actually, if you look carefully, there are 4 items circled, and they are actually correctly marked here with each of those options. Let's see, I actually meant to click on the other one, which already had the extraction schema filled in. So let me go back to demo 4 again. Yeah, so these little icons over here, I should have paid more attention. So the fact that this has the yellow extract highlighted means that I've already filled in the extraction information for this one. So this one's going to be a little bit more interesting to look at. So here in extract, typically if you were this physical therapist, right, like this is your personal form, right, you might be seeing 3 to 4 new patients per day. If you're a large chain, you may be getting hundreds of these per day. And so you do want to extract a structured schema from this. So here's this set of PARQ questions, right? So this is coming back as like all of them have been circled as false. And then here's an item that asks for the pre-existing conditions. And so this is basically able to convert kind of all of these individual checkboxes, of which only 4 are circled, to be able to say, the pre-existing conditions are these 4 which are circled. So you're kind of getting rid of all of the ones that are not circled and retaining just those. So we've really seen very good performance on a wide variety of unusual healthcare forms. Here's one that has a whole bunch of different check boxes, right? So, how did you hear about our clinic? Various medical conditions to check. So we've seen people check boxes in lots of different ways, right? Like there's the X version, there's the check mark version, there's the like filling it in version. And so the system actually does perform quite well on checkboxes with lots of different kind of human approaches to how they fill out those checkboxes. Um, couple other, let's see, there's I like this police report. Is it this one? I think it's this one. So we talked to quite a few insurance agencies. So in the property and casualty space, right, if you do have a homeowner's claim, oftentimes there's a police report involved. This would be a very standard representation of what they might look like. So they often have stamps on them. They have often been scanned multiple times, and they will often have rotated pages, and they will have police officer handwriting within those rotated pages. So this one's a nice example of, if you turn your head a little bit here, like the complaint report 2761 is correctly extracted, and the police officer's handwriting, we've got time 8:30 p.m., right? So we've got 8:30 p.m. here. So this is a nice example of a document that's got kind of a mixture of kind of typewritten text and then this handwritten text, which is rotated. If you've never worked with documents before, you may not know that the rotation causes a huge problem. So we're also working with a lot of healthcare organizations. This is just 13 selected pages from a clinical trial protocol. This was publicly available with the values had already been redacted at the time that I grabbed it. But the reason I like to show this one is that it has these very complex and rotated tables at the end. So we take a look at something like this. This is the dosing schedule that goes along with that clinical trial. So it's a complex table, it's rotated, it has merged headers, and again, not going to go kind of box by box to verify the accuracy here, but the extractions are very good. This one is actually even more complex in terms of the merged cells. So, if you're talking about something, critical like a, clinical trial dosing schedule, you definitely want to accurately represent this table. I'm just going to show one more. We're doing a lot of work with transportation and logistics companies. So something like these bills of lading. So there's an awful lot of paperwork involved in shipping and logistics, and lots of different formats. Often the image quality is not very good, right? So you're getting something like this. Here you are getting an attestation type. So that's a chunk type we haven't seen before, which is kind of any sort of stamps or signatures. And here it's going to tell you that this signature is illegible. But I think there's at least one other bill of lading where the signature is legible. So let's try this one. Ah, yes. So where possible, okay, it says that one's illegible also. Trust me, where possible, it will actually tell you who signed the document as best as possible. But we're definitely working with a lot of shipping and logistics, and you can see that there's lots of issues with like the original image quality not being so great, but being able to pull out something like this, even just recognizing that this is two rows is actually really difficult, just because there are no dividing lines between it. So this is something we've spent a lot of time teaching our model to do correctly. I think that's kind of the end of the demo section. Now we're going to go through some of the like security, getting started, support, and then we'll take a look at some code as well. How are we doing on questions?
We have two. Want me to take them now, or do you want to wait till the end of the session?
Yeah, what are they?
What are some business use cases for document extraction or from, say, a utility bill that was demoed? Thanks. I think this person's referring to what are additional strong business cases for ADE.
Um, so So the utility bill in particular, so I see the question now written. So I guess I'm interpreting it as like, who would care about utility bills? Um, the That one actually was inspired by a company that is offering incentives for solar. And so they are taking in people's utility bills to try to understand how much energy they're using, where they're located, and what incentives are available in their area to adopt certain clean energy. So that was actually a real use case of like they get lots of utility bills. We also see utility bills used as proof of address when applying for a home loan. So banks actually also often deal with utility bills.
A next good question. Could you show something along the lines of post-extraction? Are you doing prediction on the extracted data or creating further reports for decision makers?
Yes. So we're going to leave that portion to you. So I'm going to jump over to Excel here. This is actually my structured output from all of those utility bills. So, here's all of my original documents, the account numbers that I pulled out, like the total amount due. So, in terms of what you want to do with this next, we don't actually get involved in that step. So, you could connect this to any sort of business intelligence system, so like a Power BI, a Tableau kind of system. You could just like write this information into tables, right? So maybe you have Snowflake, AWS, like S3, wherever you want to put it. So we don't actually get involved with like what you do next with it. We're really just focusing on like representing the original document. Um, I think if you want to see more complete stories of what people are doing next, we do have a couple really good case studies on the website. And let me see if I can find that OLIS one in real time here. Yes. So this, which one should I click on? Let's try this one. Um, this was actually a wonderful webinar done with Olus Medical, where they actually show like their entire front end experience that they've created, which uses agentic document extraction on the back end. So, in my role in the field, I'm often familiar with what the company is ultimately trying to build that uses ADE on the back end. But we don't typically include that in the webinars. We let those companies kind of tell their own story of what they've chosen to build. So this is definitely one to check out. There's actually a really nice this video. You can like hear from the CEO directly, and he gives like a demonstration of like exactly what they've built with ADE. Okay. I'm going to cover a couple other things here, and I hope we'll get to do some of the code walkthrough. So let's start with security. So this page that I'm on is actually accessible from the footer of the website. It's this one, security and compliance. So easy to get to this page. It's going to go through all of those compliance frameworks that you saw on the slide in a little bit more detail. And it's going to give you more detail about the zero data retention. So with the zero data retention, data is processed in memory and is never stored by us or our subprocessors. And sensitive documents are used exclusively for the extraction process and immediately discarded. So typically, it's the ZDR that allows the FS organizations, the healthcare organizations, to be able to process things like people's pay stubs, people's bank statements, people's health information. So take a look at this page or send it to the relevant person in your organization for review. Pricing is also public, so there's a link in the top here for pricing. And everything is available either on a pay-as-you-go basis or on a subscription basis. For the subscriptions, there are monthly and annual plans. The annual plan will give you access to all of the credits up front, and gives you kind of some additional better unit economics. So sometimes if people are having trouble estimating like their monthly, I just tell them like, hey, get the annual, you'll just get a lump sum of credits. If you run out, like you can always get more. Um, Note that to access the zero data retention does require coming in with a minimum of the team level subscription, which is at $250 per month. So if you do need zero data retention, that is not available with the pay as you go. So otherwise, $1 buys 100 credits. As you move up in spend, that same dollar is going to buy you more credits. If you're spending more than about $5,000 a month with us, you're going to fit into our enterprise segment. Or if you need any of the things on any of the other deployment options. So if you need VPC, if you need the single tenant SaaS, then you're also going to fit into the enterprise segment. Otherwise, you can kind of self-serve, choose your number of credits, do this checkout process. And in the organizational plan, once you create a personal account, then you buy a subscription, then it's going to let you invite other people to that subscription. So it basically converts your personal account to an organizational account. As you go up in tiers, you get access to more support, but everybody gets basic support through the documentation and through our Discord. So switching over to documentation, this is available at docs.landing.ai. If you're in the playground, it's also available down here as the documentation link. So there's um, there's a lot of good stuff here. And Bianca, who maintains our docs, just does an absolutely amazing job. So there's information here for using the playground, using the Python library, using the TypeScript library, and using the API. So there's really like four sets of documentation here, depending on which interface you're working with. I'll also draw attention to this API right here. So we've been talking about parse, split, and extract. You'll see another one here called parse jobs. Parse jobs is intentionally for large documents or large batches. So this is going to process asynchronously. It's going to be a better choice for batch processes that are not time sensitive. The parse API is going to limit you to a document of 100 pages, but parse jobs, you can go up to 6,000, I believe, is the current limit. So it's really intended for those larger documents. And on this page, you're going to get syntax for interacting with the API in any of your preferred language. So depending on what system you're trying to integrate with. Um, we do like to steer people toward the Python library as much as possible. It's got some other nice features for visualizing and saving things that you don't get with the REST API directly. And I also like to draw attention to this section of the documentation. This is going to give you more examples for schemas. So we did, some basic schemas with that utility bill, but it's going to show you how you can nest different things. It's going to explain the difference between null and not null, and give you some kind of best practices down here for writing your schema. So like to draw attention to that page. Other support options, we have a Discord community that is managed by our developer relations specialist, Ankit. So you can join this community. This is also available from inside the playground is this little Discord icon right here for community. So inside of here, there's a couple different channels. There's a bot that's trained on all of our documentation that can help you out. And there's a way to ask questions for human help. So definitely join the Discord community. And then the last thing I'll highlight is what we call our ADE helper scripts. So this is a repository where we publish kind of reusable workflows. So, if you're looking for how do I do field extraction or how do I do retrieval augmented generation, you will most likely find a nice kind of end-to-end example already in this list, and we're trying to add to this list frequently. So, like, here's a derivative of the utility bill one that we just did. So that's a little bit on support and documentation. So I'm going to spend the last 10 minutes on the code walkthrough. So like if you're not a coder, if you're maybe like the product manager, you can drop off at this point. But I do want to show some of the code walkthroughs for some of the developers on the line. And all of these code walkthroughs are available here in this ADE helper scripts repository. All right. Um, so I think this is a really nice one that kind of brings a lot of concepts together. So it's in workflows field extraction, and it's called classify, extract, visualize. And so you'll see kind of why we named it that because that's basically what it's going to do here. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay. So what is the use case here? So the use case is for mixed user submitted documents. And so we're imagining that we're a bank that issues loans and each applicant sends in various financial documents that go along with their application. So they might send in a pay stub, a bank statement, an investment statement. And typically, when you send things, they're called, like document 4 or like image 571, right? So when the bank first receives them, this is just a mixture of documents that they need to understand. So the challenge here is to automatically classify each document type, extract the relevant information based on the document category, and then be able to show where all of this comes from. So here we're just looking at one of the sample documents. We're going to be using 3 different documents, and those are actually available over here to take a look at. So there's an investment statement, a bank statement, and a pay stub. To be careful about. Okay, so let's scroll back to where we were. Okay, so that's the use case. We can see some of the documents. So what do we need to do first? So we're going to define 3 different categories. So you have to kind of know what you're looking for. So we're going to define that of these user submitted documents, these are some of the things that we're looking for. And of course, a bank statement and an investment statement actually have a lot of the same information. So this also kind of illustrates the ability to differentiate those document types. Um, Now we need to do an extraction schema. So on our utility bill, we had, like 15, 20 items we were asking for. Here we're going to kind of just keep it simple. So on the bank statement, we just want these 3 items. And on the investment statement, we just want these 3 items, just keeping it simple. And on the pay stub, it looks like we've got these 4 items. Hmm. So now we've got our list of schemas. So how do we do this? So first we're going to need to parse each document. So we're going to send it to the Parse API so that we have a digital representation of that document. And then we're going to apply the extraction schema to be able to categorize it. So don't worry about all of the code here, but this is the part that's actually sending it to the Parse API. So we're going to send the document, we're going to send it to the latest model, and then here we're going to apply the categorization schema. And we're going to store what we get back for later use. So if you notice the print statements here, it says, print parsing complete when the parse API is done, then print a little bit of the markdown, and then print this, extracting document type, and then print for us what type of document it is. So you can see for this file called ACC_statement, here's the beginning of the document itself, and then it's been determined to be an investment statement. And this one has been determined to be a bank statement, and this one's determined to be a pay stub. So at this point, we have the markdown response for each document, and we know what type it is. So now we can actually apply the specific extraction schema for each type. So in here, again, we'll have client extract. So this is calling the extract API, and we're sending the correct JSON schema that is matched to the document. So recall above, we were asking for just 3 items from the investment statement. So here are those 3 items. There were 3 items we wanted from the bank statement, and there were 4 items that we wanted from the pay stub. So we've now extracted all of that information, applying the correct schema. Yeah. This section is just going to show how you can use some of that bounding box information to overlay on top of the original document. So you can generate something like this where we're actually overlaying like every single chunk. But more commonly, you may want to visualize the extracted fields only. So here we've got the investment statement. Again, we had asked for 3 items. And so now we're just highlighting the 3 locations where those items came from. On the bank statement, we had asked for 3 items. So we're highlighting where those 3 items came from. And on the pay stub, there should be 4 items highlighted here. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is hopefully a fairly realistic use case of you've got a mixture of documents, you've got specific fields you're looking for in each document. You may want to visualize that for kind of human in the loop verification. And you want to be able to do all of this programmatically with, an easy to use language such as Python. So definitely encourage you to take a look at this code walkthrough. The other one, if you are here mostly to prepare documents for RAG, I'll steer you toward this one, is in the retrieval-augmented generation chunking for RAG. And this uses those some of those common cold documents that we saw earlier. So it kind of prepares these scientific papers for a retrieval-augmented generation system. So there's lots of other examples here, but to get started kind of end to end with parse, classify, extract, visualize, this one's really good. And to get started with RAG, this one is really good. And we can send those in the follow-up along with the OLIS case study, and we'll kind of come up with a custom follow-up based on the things I've talked about today. But if you're still with us, thank you for your attention. Please do create an ADE account if you don't already have one. Try it out and let us know your experience. And I can take 1 or 2 final questions before we wrap up.
Let's see. It looks like we have another one. Great question. For someone with less or no coding experience, does the platform come with pre-built models for use cases such as bank statements or pay stub extraction or other general use cases?
That one's a little tricky to answer because like the whole, yes, we're providing the pre-built models for parse, split, and extract. You can use them in the user interface, right? Kind of as fast as you can drag and drop and then download the results. You can probably also find a freelancer or somebody in our Discord community that can help you do that like in a lightweight application. So depending on how many you're doing, I would encourage you to maybe like sync up with somebody who can do it for you programmatically.
Excellent. We are at time now. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Everyone have a great day.